How much do Oxford students really work? And is the course that hard? Are two of the questions I get so much as an Oxford YouTuber. So for this video, I'm going to run through exactly what I do day by day in my week to hit what Oxford say you should do, a full-time job worth of work, which is 40 hours. So let's go through it, break it down, and then it'll be up to you to work out whether you think that's reasonable, whether you think that's a lot or not a lot. If you ask Oxford students, I reckon a lot of them will tell you they work less than 40 hours a week. But I guess that depends on contact hours as well, because 40 hours includes all your contact hours. So the more contact hours you have, the fewer actual hours of work in the library you have to do. But let's use my own course as an example. Of my 40 hours, how many hours do I have of contact per week? And so what's the remainder that I actually have to work over myself? I do classics, which is definitely going to have less contact hours than the average science course, but I still have quite a lot. In my course, I'm basically being taught Latin from scratch. So every day I have a 10 to 11, which is a language class. So that's immediately 5 hours of my 40 hours. On top of that, I actually have 1 hour a week of Greek as well. So that's now 6. So in total, between the Latin and Greek in classics, I have 6 language class contact hours a week. What else do I have? Oxford is famous for the tutorial system, which is when you kind of do a piece of written work to your tutors, they mark it, and you go through it with them in a one-on-one or a 2 maybe students and 1 3-on-1 each week. And so I have 1 essay tutorial every week as well. That takes us up to 7 hours. On top of my tutorial, which is for the essay I have to produce each week, we also have other tutorials. This is not necessary every week and it swaps around during the term. It's a bit more informal, and that could either be more language tutorials that aren't in a class setting in general Oxford, but in our specific college with our specific tutors helping us, ancient history tutorials, and sometimes we have miscellaneous one-off tutorials. So in total, I would say you have a few of those each week. Let's give an average of 2 hours. And so that means 3 hours of tutorials a week, 1 which I know every single week I'm going to have my essay tutorial, and then 2 of the other miscellaneous ones that, depending on the week, you could get any variety. And so I now have had 9 contact hours a week, 6 of language, 3 of tutorials. The last part of contact hours that count towards your 40 hours is of course lectures. Lectures are definitely still important in Oxbridge, although you do have these tutorials, which means that maybe they're less important or take up less of your time compared to other unis. But I have gone to about 3 hours of lectures a week, which maybe is a lot, maybe not a lot, depending. I know a lot of people go to way fewer hours. The first lecture we had to go to each week was on a Monday, and it was called Text and Context. That's compulsory. And depending on your options, you might get some different lectures. I am doing a philology option, basically linguistics. So that's another 2 hours a week, which the vast majority of people who haven't chosen this specific optional course will not go to. But that takes my lectures a week to 3 hours. So now 6 hours of the language, 3 hours on average of the tutorials, and 3 hours of the lectures takes me to 12 hours of contact hours a week, which leaves me 40 minus 12, 20 hours. And 20 hours divided by your 7 days means you have to work about 4 hours a day on top of everything else. So hopefully it already sounds a bit more reasonable. Again, if you do a science when you're in labs 2 days a week, I'm going to say that's, let's say, 6 hours of labs, I'm not too sure. That immediately means you only have to do 20 hours for the rest of the time, and of course you're going to have tutorials and maybe other lectures on top of that, so you don't actually have to be working that much. It all balances out. So with it in mind that I have to do about 20 hours of work throughout the week, let's talk about how I split that up. I find it useful to kind of imagine that my week finishes on a Wednesday, because my essay is due on a Wednesday, which is probably the thing you spend most of your time in the library working on. Of course, you have to do language work as well. And so I kind of imagine that I have this big push to the end of the week Wednesday, and once that's done, that's kind of it. And what that means is, I probably work a bit harder on the Wednesday. On Wednesday, I have my 10 to 11 Latin class, so I can come back and start my work at earliest at about 11:15, 11:30. And I reckon I work from 11:30 to about 4 o'clock on my essay every single Wednesday. The essay is due in at 5. I haven't missed the deadline yet, which is good. And depending on the week, sometimes I hand it in at 4:45. Sometimes it's 3:20. But on average, let's say 4 o'clock. So that is 4.5 hours. Let's say half an hour of breaks in between. And of course, maybe I start a bit earlier than 11:30 as well, to be fair. So if I were to start at 11:15, that encompasses 45 minutes worth of break. That's 4 hours I spend on Wednesday already on just the essay. So if my essay is due in on the Wednesday, of course I'm also working on it on the Tuesday. On the Tuesday, I have my 10 to 11, and then I actually have my linguistics lecture from 11 till 12. So I'm coming back at 12:15, 12:30. I would say I spend another 4 hours working on the essay on Tuesday, and that can be writing it to get to the point where it's close enough on the Wednesday just to be able to finish it off, polish it, read through if I have time. I don't often read through it, to be honest. That's one of the criticisms I get quite a lot. But Tuesday is also a very important day for the essay. So 4 hours on Tuesday for the essay. Monday as well, after my 10 to 11, I have the philology lecture, actually at 12 till 1, which is kind of annoying because you have a bit of a dead time in the middle for 1 hour and then you've got to go to your lecture. But I come back at 1:30 till 3:30 I probably spend on the essay. So that is currently 10 hours so far on the essay, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. And on top of that, I think I'll add 2 hours on the Sunday as well. I would say I only spend about 4 days out of the 7 writing the essay, and that allows me roughly 12 hours to do the essay. Maybe the Sunday and the Monday is the reading, maybe a bit of Tuesday as well, start to write on the Tuesday, and then Wednesday, finish the essay. There we go. So that leaves us with 16 hours. We've had, of the 40, 12 for contact, another 12 for the essay, 24 in total, 16 left. Of these 16 hours, I would say I spend half an hour a day, every single day, just working on vocab. I use Anki. Some of my earliest videos on this channel are about Anki. It's basically a Quizlet, just helps you memorize words in an effective way. I won't go too much about it. But every single day, I make sure I'm religious with doing my Anki, because that helps me remember my vocab. And of course, each day maybe you're adding a few new words, and you learn those new words and also remember the old ones for the half an hour. But over the 7 days, that's of course 3.5 hours, which takes out 16 remaining hours to 12.5 remaining hours. But I would say out of that half an hour, the majority of that is on the Latin side. Because I have daily Latin, we're always getting new vocab, we're moving very quickly through it. And of course, I'm starting from complete scratch, so I'm going to have to work harder on that. So the majority of that is definitely Latin vocab. But, of course, Oxford know that, and so to counteract that, in our once a week Greek class, they set us a weekly test. And to be honest, the tests are hard, and it's not my priority during the week, I don't think. If I have to sacrifice one thing because I'm feeling tired, I often do sacrifice this, to be fair. The other thing is, obviously, because remembering stuff is not something you can really cram at the last minute. If I'm tired on a Sunday, tired on a Monday, suddenly it goes a bit badly, the test, because you need to put in that time, which is not the best, but, you know, that's the truth, to be honest. But let's say, in theory, in a perfect week, for my Thursday Greek test, I would spend, let's say, half an hour on Wednesday, half an hour on Tuesday, half an hour on Monday, half an hour on Sunday. So that's another 2 hours a week revising for this Greek test. We are now on 10.5 hours, and those 10.5 hours are probably spent just working on your general Latin and Greek. We have Latin every single day, but in that class it's not enough, because you have to now go home and consolidate what you've learnt. And same with the Greek. Once a week, apart from the test we get at the start, which is only a 5-6 minute test, the rest of it is looking at some, hopefully, complicated Greek grammar, really trying to consolidate it for us. But of course, you need to spend plenty of time afterwards going through it and making sure you understand it all. The Greek especially, we get homework, because it's only once a week, so I spend a few hours doing that. And also for the Latin, even if you don't get homework, there's still plenty of exercises to go home and do of your own volition, which I try to do. So I would say the remaining 10.5 hours, something like that, are split maybe 1 hour a day of doing the Latin on top of the class, so then you're left with about 5 hours. And to be honest, the 5 hours is mostly bunched up to the homework, which I do quite soon after the Greek class if I can. I do the Greek class, try and take notes for it, and after that I then do the homework sheet. And that roughly takes us to about 40 hours a week. Of course, it does change week on week, depending on which tasks you're set. And there will be easier weeks where perhaps you do way fewer hours because, you know, you can't be bothered, which is completely valid. Oxford is very hard to work for 8 weeks, and the week at the start of exams to make sure you've revised over the last holiday of last week's term. So it's basically a 9-week term. It's very hard to stay motivated and on it for that long. So definitely you have weeks off, and also sometimes there might be a harder week. In our last few weeks, we were given an extra Latin task, which was basically to go through a big block of text, and so we had to learn that every single day, a certain amount, which was pretty big to be fair, in preparation to then go through it in the Latin class the next day to make sure we all understood it, and then the next day we would just get masses again, homework for the next day to go through it again. So in the last 2 weeks, to be fair, I was doing a lot more than just 1 hour of Latin a day. It would probably take me like 2.5-3 hours, to be fair, if I were to do all that was set, but again, sometimes I simply couldn't manage it. So it does change week on week, but the 40 hours is probably roughly right. So there we go, that is for you to judge whether you think that's a big workload, small workload. In theory, it is possible to do everything, finish work at, let's say, 5 PM, 6 PM, 7 PM, whatever, and chill the whole evening. People do it. So there we go. I'm going to try and post more this back, because whenever I'm having a break from work, this is something fun to do, so why not? So maybe there'll just be a few more casual videos of me sitting here talking through something. And comment if you want any specific video. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.